The reinforced door to Noah's workshop exploded inward with a deafening blast, sending shrapnel and tools flying. Through the smoky air, Belhi barely had time to duck behind his workbench before four towering figures stormed into the room, their midnight blue skin gleaming under the flickering lights. The elite soldiers of House Talon moved with lethal precision, energy restraints humming to life in their gauntleted hands. Noah's heart hammered against his ribs as he calculated his odds. 0. His workshop in the grimy lower levels of Atherium Station offered no escape route. The soldiers' ceremonial armor couldn't hide their lethal intent there, eyes cold as the void beyond the station walls. The leader stepped forward, 7 FT of disciplined fury, a traditional crystalline blade hanging at his side, a weapon that could slice through bone as clear's throat easily as fabric. Noah Reeves, the commander's voice resonated through his helmet. By direct order of Lord James of House Talon, you will come with us now. Noah's hand tightened around the plasma soldiering tool on his workbench. Not much of a weapon against armored elites, but better than nothing. His mind raced through possibilities, each more desperate than the last. He knew exactly why they'd come. The forbidden prototype visor he'd created for a blind alien child had finally caught up with him. Can I at least lock up my shop? Noah asked, striving for casual defiance. Despite the cold sweat breaking across his forehead, the commander's response was a brutal backhand that sent Noah crashing into shelves of salvage parts. Pain exploded across his jaw as strong hands seized him, energy restraints burning his wrists as they activated. The soldiers dragged him through his own doorway, past the terrified faces of his neighbors, other exiles, refugees, and outcasts who quickly retreated into shadows rather than witness his fate. Please, Noah gasped through blooded lips. The girl, is she all right? The commander paused, turning back to look at the human with what might have been surprise. You will soon discover the consequences of interfering in matters beyond your comprehension, Earthling. 5 days earlier, Noah's existence had been simpler if solitary. His workshop on the lowest residential level of Atherium Station was both sanctuary and prison. A cluttered maze of salvaged parts, half-repaired engines, and alien technology no one else could fix. The former military engineer had found a measure of peace in this self-imposed exile, mending what others deemed worthless, far from Earth and its endless wars, far from his mistakes. Noah had created a life defined by routine and isolation. The station's affluent blue-skinned Tinians and other alien species rarely ventured to these depths except when they needed something repaired discreetly without questions or records. But for nearly a year he'd had one regular visitor, a small Tinian girl with delicate lavender skin who silently appeared each day, sitting on a tiny stool in the corner of his workshop. She never spoke, never interfered. She simply watched with luminous, curious eyes as he worked, seemingly fascinated by his rough human hands manipulating delicate alien components. Noah didn't know where she came from or why she chose his shop, but her quiet presence filled a void in his solitary existence. He'd taken to explaining complex schematics to her as if she understood everything, narrating his repairs in detail. See this power coupling, Noah had said to her just 6 days ago, holding up a twisted piece of metal. The trick is to realign the flow matrices without disturbing the core structure. Most people just replace the whole thing, but with the right touch, he demonstrated, his calloused fingers moving with surprising delicacy among the alien components. The girl had tilted her head, her eyes following his every movement with fascination. I don't know if your people have a word for it, Noah continued, but humans call this finesse. Power isn't about force, it's about applying exactly the right pressure at exactly the right point. He smiled as the coupling sparked to life, its crystal core glowing with renewed energy. When he looked up, he thought he saw the ghost of a smile on the girl's face before her features returned to their usual solemn observation that had been their unspoken ritual until she stopped coming. The first day of her absence, Noah dismissed it as coincidence. Perhaps her family had taken a trip to one of the nearby worlds. By the second day, an unfamiliar unease had settled in his stomach, his eyes constantly drifting to the empty stool in the corner. The third day brought a suffocating silence to the workshop. Every clang of his tools seemed too loud, every welding spark too harsh against his eyes. By the fifth day, the knot of worry in his gut had become unbearable. Something was wrong. Noah had never considered himself sentimental. Sentiment was a luxury for those who hadn't seen war, but the absence of the small, silent girl left a void he couldn't ignore. He closed his shop early, setting his diagnostic tools down with unusual care. The decision felt monumental, breaking years of careful isolation. A sense of determination bordering on fear drove him toward the upper levels of Ethereum, a world he typically avoided at all costs. The journey upward through Ethereum Station was a stark reminder of the social chasm between humans and the station's dominant species. Grimy industrial corridors gave way to sterile passages of polished metal. The dim, practical lighting of the lower levels yielded to the soft ambient glow preferred by Tenian eyes. Elegant aliens and flowing garments gave him contemptuous glances, taking in his simple work clothes with obvious disdain. Hours of inquiries yielded nothing but suspicious stares and closed doors. Humans were tolerated on Ethereum as convenient labor, not welcomed as equals worthy of information. Finally, desperate, he spent his last rare earth credits bribing a bartender with tentacles for fingers and gossip for blood. The lavender girl, the bartender, leaned closer, lowering his voice as if sharing forbidden knowledge. That's Charlotte, daughter of Lord James from House Talon. His tentacles twisted nervously. There was a horrible accident near one of the ancient energy relics in the private collection wing. Energy surge damaged her optical nerves permanently. The doctors say she'll never see again. The bartender's final words followed Noah like a shadow as he navigated back down to his workshop, each step heavier than the last. House Talent is devastated. They've consulted every specialist in the sector. Nothing to be done. Tragic, really. The image of those bright, curious eyes, now eternally darkened, burned in Noah's mind. He barely registered the familiar path back to his workshop, moving on autopilot through the station's labyrinthine levels. When he finally reached his door, he stood motionless for long minutes, staring at the worn metal as if seeing it for the first time. Behind a hidden panel in his wall sat a case he'd sworn never to open, case bearing the emblem of the Earth Alliance. Inside lay an experimental neural interface prototype he'd smuggled out when leaving the military. Technology was banned due to its instability. Using it meant exile or death, but Noah was already in exile. And suddenly death seemed less frightening than the thought of that child's endless darkness that night. None of it mattered anymore. For 3 days and nights, fueled by synthetic caffeine and a determination he hadn't felt since his military days, Noah combined rough human engineering with delicate alien components scavenged from his most precious reserves. The result was an elegant visor, not perfect, not a true replacement for vision, but something that might translate the world into sensations a damaged nervous system could still process, using every connection he had and creating new ones with promises he couldn't afford to keep. He arranged a meeting and was escorted to the luxurious apartments of House Talon. The contrast between his workshop and these chambers was so stark. It felt like stepping onto another world. Crystal sculptures caught in refracted light and patterns designed to please Tinyan sensibilities. Living art installations pulsed with gentle bioluminescence. Even the air tasted different, filtered through exotic flora that removed impurities while adding subtle aromatic notes. Emma, Charlotte's mother, greeted him, tall and regal with cold eyes hiding unfathomable pain. Her silver-threaded blue skin marked her as a matriarch of high status, her bearing that of someone unaccustomed to asking for help, and especially from a human. You claim you can help my daughter when our finest medical minds have failed. Her voice carried the musical quality characteristic of her species, but edged with skepticism so sharp it could cut. Not claim hope, Noah answered simply. I've created something that might help her perceive the world differently, not sight as she knew it, but something in its place. Emma's gaze traveled over his worn clothes, his calloused hands, his unimpressive human frame. And why would you do this? What payment do you seek? The question caught Noah off guard. He hadn't thought that far ahead, hadn't considered compensation. The driving force had been the memory of curious eyes and silent companionship. She sat in my shop, he said finally, every day for nearly a year, watching me work, never speaking, just present in a place where most of your kind wouldn't set foot. She made herself at home. I owe her that same courtesy. Something shifted in Emma's expression. Not warmth, not yet, but perhaps the first crack in a frozen lake. She nodded once and led him through chambers that grew increasingly private, away from the public areas of the house. In a room bathed in soft blue light sat small fingers tracing patterns on a tactile learning board designed for the visually impaired. Her movements were precise but hesitant, as if still adjusting to this new way of experiencing the world. When the door opened, her head turned toward the sound, but her once bright eyes stared vacantly past them. Noah's chest tightened at the sight. He knelt before Charlotte, careful to announce his presence first. Hello, I'm Noah. I'm the mechanic you used to visit. Recognition flickered across her features. She tilted her head, the same gesture he'd seen countless times in his workshop, but this time with uncertainty, unable to confirm what her ears told her. You fix broken things, she said, her voice soft and melodic like her mother's, but with a child's clarity. You talk to me about matrices and flux capacitors and quantum entanglement. Noah smiled, surprised. You understood all that? Not all the words, but I understood you were showing me something important. With gentle hands, Noah removed the visor. From its protective case, the design was elegant despite its hybrid nature, human. Technology merged with Telenian. Components, curves, and angles working in harmony. This might feel strange, he warned, carefully fitting the device over her eyes and temples. It won't give you back your sight exactly, but it might help you sense the world in a new way. Charlotte remained perfectly still as he made final adjustments, her trust humbling him. Emma watched with the intensity of a predator protecting its young, ready to intervene at the first sign of distress. Noah activated the device with a subtle command. Charlotte gasped, her small hands flying up to touch the visor. For a terrible moment, he feared he'd caused her pain. Then her fingers relaxed, moving tentatively through the air before her. I see, she whispered, each word measured. Testing, not light, shapes, heat, movement. She slowly turned her head toward him. You are warm, brighter than the room. Her hand reached out, finding his face with uncanny accuracy. I can see you. Tears streamed down Emma's cheeks as she sank to her knees beside them. Charlotte, is it true? The girl turned to her mother's voice, a smile blossoming across her face. Mother, you're the brightest thing here. You glow like the gardens at festival time. Emma gathered her daughter into her arms, looking over Charlotte's shoulder at Noah with eyes no longer cold but filled with wonder and gratitude. The icy wall between them began to melt, the first droplets of something warmer trickling through. Now 4 days later, Noah was being dragged through the upper quarters of Etherium Station, his arms bound painfully behind him, his face bloody from the commander's blow. It wasn't an arrest, it was an assault. They didn't speak as they marched him through crowded areas, a spectacle for all to witness. The human who had dared reach above his station, now being put firmly in his place. Tinians and other aliens stepped aside, their expressions ranging from indifference to contempt to hidden sympathy. None intervened. Noah steeled himself, certain he was being taken to his execution for using banned technology on a child of the ruling class. The soldiers brought him to an enormous throne room and forced him to his knees. Pain shot through his legs as they struck the hard crystal floor. Before him, on a magnificent throne, carved from what appeared to be a single massive gemstone, sat Lord James of House Talon, Charlotte's father. His face resembled a stone mask, severe angles and planes that revealed nothing of the mind behind them. His skin was a deeper blue than most Tenians, almost midnight in its intensity, marked with the silver threading that indicated both age and status. When he spoke, his voice thundered like distant storms over mountain ranges. You dare to use untested human technology on a child of House Talon. Do you know the punishment for this transgression? Each word fell like a physical blow. Noah lifted his head, meeting the alien lord's gaze directly. Blood trickled from his split lip, but his eyes blazed with defiance. I know only that your doctor said impossible. I said I'll try. If I had to, I'd do it again. A ripple of shocked murmurs spread through the Kurters, gathered at the edges of the vast room. No human had ever addressed a house lord with such boldness. The soldiers tightened their grip on their weapons, awaiting the order to execute this insolent creature. Lord James stared at Noah for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then, to everyone's astonishment, his stern face unexpectedly softened, and he laughed, a deep, resonant sound that filled the cavernous chamber. Audacity. That's what has always distinguished humans from other species we've encountered. He stood descending the steps from his throne with deliberate grace. You're no criminal, Noah Reeves. You're our honored guest. With a gesture, he commanded the soldiers to remove Noah's restraints. The commander hesitated, clearly confused, but complied. The energy cuffs deactivated with a soft hiss, leaving angry red marks on Noah's wrists. My lord, the commander began. The human used bad technology. He used his knowledge to restore my daughter's connection to the world when all our vaunted medical science failed. Lord James interrupted. Would you have me punish such a feat? The commander bowed deeply, retreating. Of course not, my lord. Forgive my presumption. After the initial shock subsided and the restraints were removed, Noah remained alone in the hall with Emma, who had entered silently. During the exchange, the Curters and soldiers had withdrawn at a subtle signal from Lord James, leaving them in relative privacy among the towering crystal columns. Emma approached him, her gaze no longer cold but filled with complex emotions, respect, curiosity, and something else he couldn't identify. Our physicians have examined Charlotte thoroughly, she said, her voice soft yet carrying easily in the perfect acoustics of the hall. The visor you created doesn't simply translate visual data. It's formed a new kind of neural connection. She sees differently now, but in some ways more deeply than before. I just wanted to help her, Noah replied, rubbing his raw wrists. Visor wasn't designed to be permanent. It will need adjustments as she grows. As her neural pathways adapt, you would continue to help her even after this. Emma gestured to his injured face. I didn't build it for glory or reward, he said simply. I built it because a child sat in my shop every day for a year, and when she needed help, I had something to offer. Emma studied him with new intensity. I thought we thought humans were barbarians relying on brute force and primitive technology, but what you did. She shook her head slightly, struggling to articulate a paradigm shift. It wasn't about force, it was about hope, about seeing possibilities where others saw only limitations. That's the best of humanity, Noah said quietly, not our weapons or our wars. It's our refusal to accept that something can't be fixed. Emma moved closer, her tall, elegant form making him acutely aware of his disheveled state. My husband wishes to honor you publicly. There will be a celebration tomorrow. All the great houses will attend. Noah winced, imagining himself on display like some exotic specimen. That's really not necessary. It is absolutely necessary, Emma interrupted, touching his hand tentatively. The contact burned him more than any plasma cutter ever had, her skin cool and smooth against his callous palm. You brought light back to my daughter. You brought light back to me as well. The dynamic between them had changed forever, a bridge forming across a chasm of species and class that had seemed uncrossable days before. The celebration in Noah's Clear's throat, honor was extravagantly lavish, beyond anything he could have imagined, dressed in elegant alien attire that felt stiff and constraining. He moved awkwardly among the aristocracy of Atherium. Servants had spent hours treating his injuries, applying regenerative compounds that healed his visible wounds but couldn't touch his internal discomfort at being the center of such attention. Lord James officially named him a friend of House Talon, granting him a status no human had ever received before. The ceremony involved ancient words spoken in the Tinian High language, rituals involving crystalline waters from their home world, and the presentation of a medallion that marked him as under the house's protection. This unexpected elevation aroused curiosity in some guests and thinly veiled jealousy in others. No one noticed hostile glances from lords of competing houses who couldn't accept that a primitive human had achieved such recognition. Throughout the evening he felt like an exhibit in a museum, fascinating but ultimately not belonging. Escaping the noisy crowd, Noah found a secluded balcony overlooking the vastness of space. The view was breathtaking. The great swirl of the galaxy spread before him, distant stars burning with cold fire against the void. On the lower levels, such vistas were unavailable. The few viewports small and often clouded by years of grime. He breathed deeply, loosening the high collar of his formal attire. The artificial air here was perfumed with subtle scents designed to please Tinian senses, not unpleasant, but different from the honest machine oil and metal tang of his workshop, hard to get used to. Emma's voice came from behind him. She moved to stand beside him at the railing, her formal gown shimmering with embedded bioluminescent elements that echoed the stars beyond. I'm more accustomed to the smell of oil than exotic flowers, he responded with a slight self-deprecating smile. And yet, you created something our most brilliant minds could not. She turned to face him, the starlight catching the silver threads in her blue skin. James has assigned you chambers in the house's private wing. Clears throat. You'll have a new workshop, the finest tools, materials most humans never see. And what will I be expected to do with these gifts? Noah asked, weariness creeping into his voice. Help Charlotte, help others perhaps. The choice will be yours. She paused, studying his expression. This troubles you? Noah turned back to the stars, gathering his thoughts. Where I come from, gifts off come with invisible chains. I've spent years avoiding entanglements. Is that why you live in the lowest levels? A man with your skills could command much better circumstances. I have my reasons. The weight of his past pressed down on him, memories of technology he'd helped develop being twisted to serve warfare rather than healing. Emma was silent for a moment, respecting the boundaries he'd established. When she spoke again, her voice had softened, becoming more personal than diplomatic. You saved her, Noah, she said, her tone intimate in a way that caught him off guard. But you can't imagine what that means to me. After my first husband died in the border conflicts, Charlotte was my only light. When she went blind, I thought I would fade with her. She looked into his eyes, and in her gaze he saw not only gratitude but a deep loneliness similar to his own. Some prisons have no walls. The insight struck him profoundly. This regal alien woman, surrounded by luxury and power, understood isolation as intimately as he did. At that moment, under the light of distant stars, something invisible but powerful pulled them together. Their lips met in a slow, cautious kiss, crossing boundaries of species and station with a simple human gesture that remarkably translated perfectly across their differences. Moment was shattered by a piercing alarm and screams from the celebration hall. They broke apart, instinct driving them back toward the commotion. The elegant Guests were clustered around the main holographic display screen, faces twisted with shock and fear. The screen showed the face of Lord Nebben, head of rival House Praeton. His skin was a paler blue than the Talinians of House Talon, marked with distinctive spiral patterns that indicated his lineage. His smile was full of malice as he addressed the stunned gathering. House Talon, celebrating how touching. His voice dripped with contempt. The party is over, I'm afraid. The camera pulled back to reveal a frightened Charlotte standing beside him, her visor torn off, her small hands bound. A crystal blade hovered near her throat, held by a guard. In house praise, give me the technology and the human who created it. Nevin continued, his smile never wavering. Otherwise I'll take not only your daughter's sight but her life as well. The hall descended into chaos. Lord James roared with fury, already mobilizing his guards and issuing rapid commands to his security forces. Courtiers scattered, some rushing to offer assistance, others discreetly making their exits before violence erupted. How did they take her? Noah demanded, grabbing the arm of a passing House Talon guard. Where was she? In her chambers, sir, the guard replied, clearly torn between answering Noah and joining his unit with her tutor. We found him dead. Emma's face had transformed into a mask of cold rage. All traces of the warmth she'd shown moments before frozen beneath maternal fury. James will launch a full assault on Nevin's compound. We'll burn it to the ground if necessary. It's a trap, Noah said, the tactical part of his mind, the part he tried to bury for years, snapping back to life with crystal clarity. He's expecting a military response. He wants war between the houses, but he needs my knowledge, or he wouldn't have made demands. He'd have simply killed Charlotte and attacked while you were vulnerable. James approached, his earlier joviality replaced by the bearing of a warrior preparing for battle. My forces will be ready to launch within the hour. We'll show how, sir. The clear's throat cost of touching. Child of Talon, my lord, wait, Noah interjected, earning surprised looks from nearby Talinians unused to humans. Speaking directly to House Lord, it's a trap. He's expecting your warriors, your ships, your tactics, but he's not expecting me. What are you suggesting? James demanded, impatient but listening. Let me go alone, a single infiltrator instead of an army. That's suicide, James objected, echoed by Emma's sharp intake of breath. It won't be suicide, it'll be a surprise, Noah replied, a steely glint of his former soldier self appearing in his eyes. He's expecting a warrior of House Talon, in Tinian armor, using Tinian weapons and tactics. Instead, he'll get a dirty mechanic from the lower levels. The plan formed as he spoke, pieces falling into place. Let me do this my way, the human way. After tense debate, James reluctantly agreed, impressed by Noah's confidence and unable to deny the logic of his argument. A small, fast scout ship would take Noah close to Nevin's compound on the small moon where House Praeton maintained its primary residence. From there he would be on his own, discarding his luxurious attire. Noah reclaimed his old work jumpsuit, stained, patched, but comfortable and familiar. In his workshop, permitted 1 hour to prepare. He quickly assembled several makeshift devices, an electromagnetic pulse generator to disable electronics, a smoke bomb that blocks standard Tinian thermal scanners, and a modified tool with a built-in thermal imager, calibrated to his human vision. As he worked, Emma entered, closing the door. Behind her, she had changed as well, her elaborate gown replaced by a practical bodysuit that suggested she was no stranger to combat. "I'm coming with you," she stated, her tone brooking no argument. Noah looked up from his work, weighing his response carefully. "With respect, you be recognized instantly. Your skin, your bearing, everything about you screams house talent, nobility. She is my daughter," the words contained universes of emotion, "and that's exactly why Nevin would expect you to come," Noah countered gently. "He knows a mother would risk everything. He's counting on it." Emma's shoulders stiffened, then gradually lowered as logic overcame emotion. "What can I do then?" Noah handed her a small device. "This will link with Charlotte's visor if she's still wearing it, or if you can get it back to her. It's tuned to her specific neural patterns now. It might help you track her within the compound." Their fingers touched during the exchange, lingering longer than necessary. Neither acknowledged the current that passed between them. The kiss on the balcony, now feeling like something from another lifetime. "Bring her home," Emma said simply, "and come back with her." Infiltration of Nevin's compound began. Under the cover of manufactured darkness, Noah had the scout ship drop him near the maintenance tunnels that service the environmental systems, a weakness he'd identified from structural plans provided by House Talon intelligence. Moving through the narrow passages like a wraith, Noah relied on skills he'd hoped never to use again. The years spent repairing complex systems had kept his hands steady and his mind sharp, but it was his military training that guided him now. How to move silently, how to identify patrol patterns, how to become invisible in plain sight. When he activated the EMP grenade near the security hub, the compound's lights flickered and died momentarily, security systems rebooting. In emergency mode, the confusion bought him precious minutes to move deeper into the complex toward the private chambers, where a child would likely be held. The first guard he encountered died silently, a tool-turned weapon finding the gap between armor plates with surgical precision. Noah felt a cold detachment as he lowered the body silently to the floor, a part of himself he'd locked away resurfacing with uncomfortable ease. He wasn't proud of his efficiency, but Charlotte's life depended on it. Two more guards felt similar tactics, not through superior strength, but through the element of surprise and intimate knowledge of how armor was constructed. Noah had repaired enough Tinian battle gear in his shop to know exactly where the weak points were. Knowledge no House Payton security officer would expect a human to possess. He found Charlotte in the captain's cabin of Nevin's personal ship, docked in a private hangar within the compound. The ship was preparing for departure, an escape route if negotiations failed. She sat rigidly in a chair, the visor removed but clutched tightly in her small hands, refusing to relinquish it. Despite her captivity, Nevin himself stood nearby, monitoring communications with House Talon, his back to the door. "The deadline approaches," Nevin was saying to an aide. "Prepare the engines for immediate departure if Talon refuses. Our terms, the child comes with us. She's our insurance." Noah slipped into the cabin, making deliberate noise only when he was positioned between Charlotte and her captors. Nevin spun, drawing an energy sword that hummed with lethal potential. You came to die human, he smiled. Genuinely amused. Alone, where is the famous Talon battle fleet? Where is the grieving mother? I didn't come with an army, Noah replied calmly, slowly. Raising empty hands, I came to take what belongs to me. In a fluid motion he threw the smoke bomb, the room instantly filled with thick, disorienting vapor, specifically designed to confuse Tinian senses while leaving human vision relatively unimpaired. Nevin cursed, blindly swinging his energy sword in wide, dangerous arcs. Noah dodged with practiced ease, guided by the thermal imager he'd integrated into his work. Goggles, he reached Charlotte, who recognized his voice immediately. Noah, she gasped as he fitted the visor back over her eyes. See me, he asked urgently. She nodded, the visor quickly adapting to show her thermal patterns through the smoke. I see you. Brighter than anyone, run for the door. Follow the coolest path, it's the maintenance tunnel, I'll be right behind you. Charlotte moved with surprising confidence, the visor translating the world into patterns her damaged optical nerves could interpret. She navigated around Nevin's wild swings, small and fast, where the Telenian lord was large and increasingly disoriented. Noah remained behind, ensuring Nevin stayed occupied until Charlotte was clear. The Tinian's frustration mounted as he realized his prize was escaping. When he finally lurched from the smoke-filled room in pursuit, he found not just the human and the child, but an entire squad of House Talon's elite guard, led by James himself. The House Talon forces had boarded silently, following Noah's signal. Once Charlotte was secure, they had taken the compound with minimal resistance. Most of House Praeton's defenses disabled by Noah's systematic sabotage of their security systems. Nevin froze, his energy sword humming impotently before the overwhelming force. His carefully laid trap had been sprung, but not by the quarry he'd expected. He had prepared for a frontal assault, for the predictable tactics of Tinian warfare. Instead, he'd been undone by a single human stealth, cunning, and intimate knowledge of both technology and Tinian physiology. You violated the peace between houses, James stated formally, his voice carrying the weight of ancient tradition. You took a child of noble blood. The conclave will determine your fate. As Nevin was disarmed and restrained, Noah knelt beside Charlotte, checking that the visor was functioning properly after its rough handling. Are you hurt? He asked softly. She shook her head, her composure remarkable for one so young. Clear's throat. I kept the visor safe, she said proudly. I knew you'd come for it for me, always, Noah promised, surprising himself with how deeply he meant it. 3 months later, Noah stood on the same balcony where he'd kissed Emma during the celebration, but now this view of stars and infinite possibility was his daily reality. He no longer felt like a stranger among the sweeping architecture and refined culture of the upper levels. James had provided him with the finest laboratory on the station, resources beyond what most human scientists would see in a lifetime, but the real treasure was the family. He had found his work on the visor had expanded, refined his understanding of neural interfaces, deepening through collaboration with Tinian medical experts who had initially dismissed his primitive approach. Emma approached from behind, her steps now familiar enough that he could identify her without turning. She gently embraced Him, her cool arms encircling his waist, her chin resting lightly on his shoulder. "What are you thinking about, my human hero?" she whispered, using the endearment that had become private between them, "that sometimes to fix the universe, it's enough to fix one very small thing," he replied, covering her hands with his own. "One connection, one bridge between different worlds." Charlotte ran to join them, her movements confident and sure. The visor had evolved with her, becoming more elegant, more attuned to her unique neural patterns. Now she not only perceived heat and movement, but subtle gradations of energy that gave her insights even normal Tinian vision couldn't provide. "I've modified the sensory matrix," she announced excitedly, now speaking the technical language Noah had taught her. With natural fluency, "Come see, I can detect quantum fluctuations now." Noah looked at them, his beloved woman and the child who had become his daughter in all but biology, and realized his loneliness was forever banished. As distant as Earth itself, he had found his home not on a planet, but among the stars, in the hearts of those he had saved and who in turn had saved him. But as Charlotte tugged him back toward the laboratory, eager to show her latest modifications, a shadow crossed Noah's thoughts. Peace never lasted. Not on Earth, not on Aetherium Station, not anywhere. Beings of ambition and power coexisted. His happiness felt precarious, balanced on the edge of a precipice. 6 months into his new life, the shadow took form. An encrypted message appeared on his private terminal, its origin masked by sophisticated protocols he recognized from his military days. The content made his blood freeze. Detailed schematics of his visor technology integrated into weapon systems. Someone had stolen his designs, perverted his creation, meant for healing into tools of war. Exactly what he had fled Earth to escape that same night while the station slept in its artificial cycle. Alarms blared throughout the upper levels. An unidentified ship had docked without authorization. By the time security forces responded, the intruders had vanished along with several prototypes. From Noah's laboratory, "It must be House Breton," Lord James insisted during the emergency council meeting, his face grim. "Nevin seeks revenge for his humiliation. The conclave sanctions have only fueled his hatred." Noah studied the security footage, unconvinced. The breach was too clean, too precise. This wasn't about revenge. It was about the technology itself. Something in the intruders' movements, their efficiency, triggered memories he'd spent years suppressing. This was military professional. As a former combat engineer for Earth Special Forces, he recognized the tactical patterns of an elite extraction team, something he had once been part of himself. Over the following weeks, disturbing reports filtered in from outpost stations throughout the sector. Mercenary groups equipped with modified versions of Noah's neural interface technology had launched coordinated attacks on key trading routes, but instead of restoring vision, these devices controlled minds, turning innocent traders into willing slaves for mysterious masters. The implications horrified Noah, his creation designed to connect a child's damaged neural pathways to visual information had been weaponized to override free will entirely. The potential for mass control was catastrophic. Whispers spread through Aetherium's upper levels. "We never should have trusted a human," council members murmured when they thought Noah couldn't hear. The old prejudices resurfaced quickly, fear, finding its familiar channel in xenophobia. Only Emma stood firmly by his side, her status as a Tinian matriarch silencing the most vocal critics. If we turn against each other, now we've already lost, she declared. During a particularly heated council session, the enemy wants us divided. Suspicious week, late one night as Noah worked frantically to develop a countermeasure against his own technology, Charlotte slipped into his laboratory at 10 Tonian cycles. Roughly 13 Earth years, she had grown taller, her childish features maturing toward adolescence, her natural intelligence honed by both her unique perception and Noah's technical mentorship. I found something, she said, her voice carrying an uncharacteristic tremor. She handed him a small data crystal. It was hidden in Father's private study. I was practicing with the new visor settings, detecting energy residue, and it glowed differently than anything else. The crystal contained classified communications that revealed a devastating truth. Elements within House Talon itself had been working with an Earth Alliance splinter group, the same military division Noah had fled years before. They had used him and Charlotte as unwitting test subjects in a much larger plan, the creation of neural control technology for military applications. Lord James' name appeared repeatedly in the communications, his role ambiguous, but his knowledge of the project undeniable. The man who had welcomed Noah as family, who had given him status and resources beyond his wildest expectations, had also monitored his work for potential weapons applications from the beginning. We need to leave, Noah told Emma that night, showing her the evidence. All of us immediately leave. This is my home, my house, she protested, though he could see the conflict in her eyes as she processed her brother-in-law's betrayal. James wouldn't, he couldn't have known the full extent. He knew enough. Noah cut her off gently. And it's not safe anymore, not for Charlotte, not for me, and not for you. Once they realize what we know. A week of careful secret planning followed. Noah converted an old cargo hauler into a makeshift escape vessel, using his engineering skills to mask its signature from Ethereum's sophisticated tracking systems. Emma gradually transferred resources to anonymous accounts scattered throughout the sector, while Charlotte, with her enhanced perception, memorized the patrol schedules and security protocols. The night of their escape, everything went wrong as they approached the maintenance hangar housing their prepared ship. An entire squad of House Talon guards surrounded them, armor gleaming under emergency lights, weapons raised. Lord James stood at their center, his expression unreadable. Did you really think I wouldn't notice? He asked, his voice heavy with what sounded almost like regret. The daughter I cherish, the woman I called sister after her husband died, and the human I welcomed, his family, all conspiring behind my back. It's not what you think, Emma began, but James raised his hand to silence her. The Alliance offered us protection, advancement, place in the new order, James continued. All they needed was the technology. Your technology, Noah. At what cost? Noah demanded, positioning himself subtly in front of Charlotte, turning free people into slaves, using children like Charlotte as test subjects. James' expression hardened. Progress requires sacrifice. The galaxy is changing. Those who control this technology determine the future of all our species. Not this kind of control, Noah replied, and subtly pressed a hidden switch in his pocket. The hangar lights flickered momentarily as a localized imp, one of Noah's emergency contingencies, disabled the guard's energy weapons and communication devices. In the confusion, Emma grabbed Charlotte and they sprinted toward the cargo hauler. Noah engaged the nearest guards, using his military training not to kill but to delay, buying precious seconds for Emma and Charlotte to reach the ship. A searing pain exploded in his side. One of the guards had drawn a traditional Tenian blade, bypassing the EMP's effects. Crystalline edge sliced through flesh and muscle with frightening ease. Noah stumbled but managed to break free, clutching his bleeding side as he lunged toward the ship's closing ramp. Emma's hand reached out from the doorway, grasping his, pulling him aboard as the engines roared to life. Charlotte was already at the controls, her visor interfacing directly with the ship's system, another of Noah's modifications that now proved life-saving. The cargo hauler burst from the hangar, absorbing several hits from the station's hastily activated defense systems before disappearing into the dense asteroid field surrounding Etherium Station. Charlotte navigated with uncanny precision, her enhanced perception allowing her to detect minute energy fluctuations that revealed safe passages. Invisible to normal sensors, days turned into weeks as they traversed the dangerous borderlands between Teninian space and the uncharted territories. Noah's wound healed slowly, tended by Emma with limited medical supplies. The blade had been coated with an anticoagulant designed for Toynian physiology. Its effect on human tissue was unpredictable and prolonged. "Why didn't you tell me?" Emma asked one night as she changed his bandages, her voice low to avoid waking Charlotte in the ship's small crew quarters. "About your suspicions regarding James." Noah winced as the antiseptic compound burned in his wound. "I wasn't certain. Clears throat, and I didn't want to force you to choose between your family." And he hesitated, and what Emma pressed, her hands pausing in their work, "and us." He finished simply, "Whatever this is between us, I didn't want it built on accusations against your kin." Emma's eyes held his for a long moment. "Family is more than blood," she said finally. "It's who stands beside you when the void is darkest." She finished dressing his wound with gentle efficiency. "You and Charlotte are my family now." James made his choice. They eventually found refuge on Carrion, a remote outpost planet populated by species from across the galaxy who sought escape from the political machinations of the major houses. The blue-skinned indigenous population, tall four-armed beings with an ancient culture predating space travel, welcomed them cautiously, intrigued by Charlotte's visor technology and its potential medical applications. Noah established a small workshop similar to his old one on Etherium, but with a crucial difference. This one had windows overlooking a vast azure forest where vegetation evolved to capture the light of twin suns that painted the sky in perpetual twilight. He dedicated himself to creating simpler, safer versions of his neural interface technology, ones that couldn't be weaponized but could help those with neurological injuries. Emma, once a noble of one of the most powerful houses in the sector, adapted to their humble circumstances with unexpected grace. She learned the local language with quick precision, barter with traders using skills she'd observed but never needed in her privileged former life, and began documenting the rich oral history of Carolyn's people. At night she and Noah would sit on the porch of their simple dwelling watching the strange constellations above, his hand in hers, their impossible journey somehow leading to this moment of quiet companionship. Charlotte thrived in this new environment, the local children curious about her visor and her exotic blue skin soon became her friends, and exploring companions, she developed a particular bond with the village healer, an ancient Carolonian who recognized the girl's gift for understanding patterns and connections under his tutelage. She began combining Noah's human technology with traditional Carolinian medicine, creating hybrid devices that respected the balance valued in their culture. Their peace lasted almost a year before a familiar ship appeared in Carolyn's sky. Noah spotted at first the distinctive silhouette of a House Talon scout vessel cutting through the azure clouds. "They found us," he said simply when Emma joined him outside their dwelling, his hand instinctively moving to the makeshift weapon he kept hidden in his work clothes. But when the ship landed in the village center, it wasn't Lord James who emerged, nor his elite guards. It was Stephen, James's younger brother and Emma's childhood friend. Looking haggard and worn, his once immaculate appearance now disheveled, his silver tray skin dulled with exhaustion. "The Alliance has taken control of House Talon," he told them that night, speaking in hushed tones as Charlotte slept in the adjacent room. "James is dead officially. An accident during a diplomatic mission. But everyone knows the truth. They're implementing the neural control technology throughout the sector. House Peyton has already fallen. I barely escaped with my life. Why come to us?" Noah asked, suspicion evident in his voice. "How did you find us?" "Because you're the only one who truly understands the technology," Savon replied, his eyes reflecting the flickering light of their simple cooking fire. "And because there's a resistance forming, people who have seen what these devices really do when fully deployed. They need you, all of you." Noah and Emma exchanged a long look, years of hardship and love contained in that silent communication. "No more running," Emma finally said, her jaw set with determination. Snorts Charlotte deserves a world where she can be free, where all children can be free. Noah nodded slowly, the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders. "I created this technology to help a child see. I won't let them use it to blind the universe." The next morning, as Carolyn's twin sons rose, casting long blue shadows across the settlement, Noah began modifying workshop once again. This time he wasn't building a visor or planning an escape. He was creating a counter measure, a device that could disrupt the neural control signals without harming those already implanted with the corrupted version of his technology. Charlotte, now 12 Tonian cycles and rapidly growing into her inherited intelligence, worked alongside him. Her visor had evolved with her, allowing her to perceive not just heat and shadows, but complex patterns of energy, including the distinctive signature of the Alliance's control technology. "It's like a song with a missing note," she explained to Noah as they calibrated the prototype disruptor. "We just need to find that note and play it louder than their song." Emma and Seven gathered allies, traders, refugees from Alliance controlled territories and Carolinians, who understood that if the alliances' control spread to their world, their ancient freedom would be lost forever. They established a network of informants and safe houses stretching back toward Etherium sector. 3 months of preparation culminated in their first mission, intercepting an Alliance supply ship carrying neural implants destined for the mining colonies in the Barren Belt. Noah, despite Emma's objections, insisted on leading the small strike team himself. "I've sent others to fight my battles for too long," he told her. The night before departure, tracing the curve of her face in the darkness of their simple bedroom, "This began with me. I need to be part of ending it." The raid succeeded beyond their expectations. Not only did they capture the shipment, but they also retrieved crucial Alliance data on the neural network's central control protocols. More importantly, they freed 30 miners, already fitted with control implants, using Charlotte's prototype disruptor to break the Alliance's hold on their minds. The freed miner stories were harrowing, full awareness trapped inside bodies that obeyed commands against their will, forced to work in conditions no free being would tolerate. Some wept when they regained control. Others raged, but all carried the same haunted look of those who had experienced the ultimate violation. Word spread quickly throughout the sector. Stories circulated of the human engineer who had once given sight to a blind alien child and now offered freedom to those enslaved by his own creation. Resistance grew, bolstered by each success, each freed mind adding strength and conviction to their cause. The Alliance, recognizing the threat, placed unprecedented bounties on their heads, particularly Noah's assassins and bounty hunters combed the borderlands searching for them. Twice they were forced to relocate their base of operations, always moving further into uncharted territories where the Alliance's influence was weaker. During one particularly narrow escape, Noah was separated from the others, their ship damaged by Alliance pursuers. They had been forced to split up, planning to rendezvous at a predetermined location. But Noah's escape pod was damaged, sending him off course to a desolate moon where survival itself became a daily battle against the elements. For 3 agonizing weeks, Emma and Charlotte believed him dead, killed in the ambush that had claimed 4 of their resistance fighters. When he finally returned, thinner and bearing new scars but very much alive, Charlotte ran to him first, her enhanced vision having detected his approach long before anyone else. "I knew you weren't gone," she whispered fiercely as he held her. "I would have seen it in the patterns. There would have been a hole in the world." Emma's reunion with Noah was more restrained in public, befitting her Tenian upbringing that valued dignity even in emotional moments. But that night, alone in their quarters, she allowed herself to crumble momentarily in his arms. "Don't you dare disappear again," she commanded through tears that glittered like diamonds on her blue skin. "Not even for a cause this important, never by choice," he promised, knowing it wasn't entirely in his power to keep. Their greatest challenge came a year into the resistance, when Alliance forces captured a major outpost, taking dozens of their allies prisoner, including Savon, the Alliance commander. General Boss, once a respected Tenian officer before receiving his upgrade, announced publicly that the prisoners would be fitted with the latest neural control implants in 3 days' time. "It's obviously a trap," said Ren, a former house guard who had joined them after. Escaping his own implantation, they know. You'll come for 7, they're counting. On it. Of course it's a trap, Noah agreed, studying the fortress-like outpost schematics with the experienced. I have both soldier and engineer, so we'll spring it, just not the way they expect. The plan required perfect timing, and Charlotte's unique abilities, using her enhanced perception she had discovered that the neural control network required periodic synchronization with the central Alliance servers, moments when the system was most vulnerable but also most vigilant. If we attack during synchronization, we can use their own network against them, Noah explained to the Resistance Council. Charlotte's disruptor amplified through their system could potentially free everyone connected to that network node simultaneously. And if it fails, asked one of the Carolinian elders, his forearms crossed in a gesture of skepticism, then we lose everything. Emma answered honestly, but if we do nothing, we lose anyway, just more slowly. The night before the mission, Noah found Charlotte sitting alone by the small stream that ran behind their current base, making final adjustments to her visor. At 13, she was caught between childhood and the adult responsibilities thrust upon her by war, her slender fingers moving with the precision of someone far older as she calibrated delicate components. Are you afraid? She asked without looking up, having sensed his approach through her visor's thermal imaging. Yes, no, admitted, sitting beside her on the mossy bank. Being brave isn't about not being afraid. It's about doing what's right despite the fear. Charlotte nodded thoughtfully. The first thing I ever really saw was you, she said after a moment, not clearly, just warmth in darkness. Did you know that? You told me once. Noah smiled, remembering the moment in the Talon apartments that seemed a lifetime ago. I never told you what I see now, she continued, her fingers still working deftly on the visor's components. It's not like how others see. It's patterns, connections, the way things flow together. I can see how people connect to each other. She paused, looking up at him with an expression visible beneath the transparent sections of her advanced visor. You and Mother, your connection burns brighter than any star. Noah felt his throat tighten with emotion. Charlotte, you don't have to say it, she interrupted gently. I've always known. You're not my biological father, but in every way that matters. She took his hand, her smaller blue fingers contrasting with his weathered human ones. You about taught me that family isn't about blood or even species. It's about who helps you see the world. Infiltration of the Alliance outpost began at dawn, while the main resistance force created a diversion at the southern perimeter. Noah, Emma, and a small team, including Charlotte, despite her parents' objections, entered through the environmental control tunnels. Their destination, the communication hub where the neural network synchronization would occur. The first part of their plan proceeded smoothly, perhaps too smoothly. They encountered minimal resistance, disabled the few guards they couldn't avoid, and reached the communication hub with 20 minutes to spare before synchronization. This doesn't feel right, Emma whispered as Noah began connecting Charlotte's disruptor to the main console, her warrior's instincts on high alert. Too late to turn back, he replied, though he shared her unease. The quarters had been too empty, the security too easily bypassed. Charlotte, her visor scanning The surrounding systems suddenly stiffened. Someone's already in the network, she said urgently, waiting. They know we're here. The doors to the hub slid open, revealing General Voss himself, flanked by soldiers with the blank expressions of those under neural control, but it was the figure behind him that made Emma gasp. Lord James, very much alive, though his eyes had the vacant quality of those under neural control. The family reunion I promised, Voss said with a cold smile, though I'm disappointed you didn't bring more of your resistance friends. No matter, you three were always the priority. Noah positioned himself in front of Charlotte while Emma's hand moved subtly toward the hidden blade at her side. You've led us on quite a chase, Voss continued, circling them. Slowly, the brilliant human engineer, the Tenian noble woman who betrayed her house, and the child who sees what others cannot. The Alliance has special plans for each of you. The Alliance doesn't plan anything, Noah replied boldly. You're just puppets for whoever controls the neural network. Who is it? Really? Earth military? Some shadow consortium? A flicker of genuine anger crossed Voss's face. You understand nothing. The network brings peace, unity, purpose, an end to the pointless conflicts between houses, between species, a galaxy unified under one will. It brings enslavement, Emma countered, her voice carrying the authority of her noble upbringing, and anything built on enslavement eventually fall. Voss signaled to his soldiers. Secure them. The synchronization begins. In 10 minutes, once complete, they'll join us willingly enough. The humans' knowledge, the child's unique neural patterns, the mother's political connections, all serving the greater good. As the soldiers advanced, Charlotte suddenly called out, Noah. The frequency, it's changing. Noah understood immediately. The synchronization had been moved up, either as a precaution or a trap. They had minutes, not the 10 they'd planned. For now, he shouted, and Emma moved with lightning speed, throwing her blade with perfect accuracy into the main power conduit. The hub plunged into darkness, emergency lights casting eerie blue shadows as systems switched to backup power. In the confusion, Noah activated Charlotte's disruptor prematurely, without full integration into the network. Its effect was limited, but sufficient to momentarily disorient those with neural implants, including Voss and James. Charlotte seized the moment, her enhanced vision unaffected by the darkness. She guided Noah and Emma toward a secondary exit while the soldiers struggled to regroup. They were halfway there when James, partially freed from the control effect, called out Emma's name. She hesitated, looking back at her brother-in-law, the man who had once welcomed Noah as family before betraying them, now himself a victim of the technology he had helped develop. Emma, please, James said, his voice fluctuating between his natural tone and the flat affect of neural control. Help me. I didn't know, didn't understand what they really planned. We can't, Noah insisted, pulling her forward. Not clears throat now. Not here. We can't leave him, Emma argued, resistance evident in every line of her body. Mother, Charlotte said firmly, her young voice cutting through the chaos. He's fighting the control. That means others can too, but we need to complete the mission or everyone remains enslaved, including him. The moment of decision was stolen from them as Voss recovered, ordering his troops to fire. Noah pushed Charlotte through the exit, then pulled Emma after them, As energy bolts scorched the wall where they had stood, they fled through maintenance corridors pursued by Voss's forces. The outpost's alarm systems blared, and security doors began sealing automatically, threatening to trap them. Each time, Charlotte's perception of the energy flows guided them to alternate routes, staying just ahead of their hunters. They reached the synchronization center, the true heart of the neural network node, with less than a minute to spare. Unlike the communications hub, this room was unguarded. The Alliance had never anticipated anyone discovering its location, let alone reaching it. They think we're still trying to escape, Noah realized as he quickly connected the disruptor to the core systems, his hands moving with practice efficiency. Despite the pressure, we have 40 seconds, Charlotte announced, her hands moving rapidly over the controls. Alongside Noah's security override, progress, an automated voice announced 30 seconds to containment protocol. Emma positioned herself at the door, weapon ready, whatever happens, she said, looking back at Noah and Charlotte with fierce determination. I've never regretted a single day with either of you. 20 seconds to containment protocol. The disruptors integrated, Noah announced, making the final connections. Charlotte, are you ready? The girl nodded, her hands steady as she prepared to activate the sequence they had designed together, father and daughter, human and alien, united by love and purpose. 10 seconds to containment protocol. Now Charlotte pressed the final sequence as the door behind Emma began to open, a pulse of energy, invisible yet powerful enough to make the air itself seem to ripple, emanated from the synchronization core. It spread outward, carried by the neural network's own connections, touching every implant, every controlled mind connected to this node. Through the opening door they saw Voss and his soldiers collapse to their knees, the sudden freedom from control overwhelming their senses. Behind them stood James, tears streaming down his face as full awareness returned to his eyes. The containment protocol activated, sealing the room, but it no longer mattered. The disruptor had worked throughout the outpost, throughout this entire sector of space. Thousands of minds were suddenly their own again. In the days that followed, the ripple effects of what came to be called the Liberation spread across the galaxy. The Alliance fractured as freed officials revealed the true extent of the neural control program, and those behind it, House Talon under James' restored leadership, led the effort to dismantle the remaining control infrastructure and heal the damage done. Noah, Emma, and Charlotte returned to Caroline, heroes to some, dangerous revolutionaries to others. They knew the fight wasn't over. Pockets of the Alliance still clung to power, and the technology Noah had created remained. The universe, its potential for misuse, still a threat. But on their first night back, sitting on the porch of their simple home beneath alien stars, Noah felt a peace he had scarcely known since leaving his workshop on Etherium Station years ago. What happens now? Charlotte asked, her visor catching the starlight. As she looked up at her parents, we rebuild, Emma said simply, her hand finding Noah's. We heal, Noah added. And we remember that technology isn't good or evil, it's what we choose to do with it that matters. Charlotte nodded thoughtfully. And we stay together always, Noah promised, looking at the family he had found not on Earth, not on Etherium Station, but among the stars. Family forged not by blood, but by choice, by love, and by the courage to see beyond darkness into light. The girl, who had once sat silently in his workshop, now stood on the cusp of adulthood, already showing signs of the remarkable woman she would become, the Talinian noble woman who had once looked at him with cold suspicion, now leaned against his shoulder, her warmth a constant reminder of how unexpected life's journeys could be. And Noah himself, once a lonely mechanic hiding from his past, had found purpose not in machines but in people, in fighting for a future where technology served humanity's best instincts rather than its worst. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. There would be more battles, more difficult choices, more moments when the fate of worlds hung in the balance. But tonight, under the twin moons of Kirian, Noah was simply a man, with his family, watching the stars and feeling for the first time in a very long time truly at home.